We've got another windy Sunday ahead of us. This was the Sunday that just been, weekend of the Dinghy Show. And it's actually pretty interesting because forecast was looking pretty big, and at first maybe that club racing was going to have to be cancelled. We were giving ourselves a strong southerly breeze, and it was forecast to be like 20, gusting 40 at the start of the week. But then it gradually dropped off to be more like 15, gusting 30, pushing maybe towards the 35s at the end. So, pretty big forecast in the great scheme of things. But, it was enough, not too bad that we could still go out and get some club racing in. Now, I spoke to the race officer on Saturday, and we all came to the agreement that short races, small course, get them back to back as quickly as possible so we're not hanging around. And everyone I spoke to on Sunday was like, that sounds great. Now, especially because the forecast, similar to the end of January where I had some windy videos, it was supposed to keep building and get much stronger. However, luckily, that didn't really happen that time, but it definitely happened this time. And you'll see what I mean shortly. But yeah, I just got myself launched. I'm just going through the line just before the lasers are due to start, so I'm just trying to get out of their way, which means I've got about 2 and a bit minutes to go. So I'm thinking, right, let's start getting the boat ready, let's get it tacked around and get myself lined up on the start line, and we'll start thinking about what's going on. I've just had a chance to see the course. The reason I went so close to the committee boat was actually so I could see the course, which was a triangle. It should be on the screen now. We've got C, which is right in front of the clubhouse, followed by, I think it was K, and then we were going up to F, which was hooked right behind the committee boat. So it's a bit of an odd triangle, as you can see from my Strava map here. But yeah, a bit of a difficult one to do with the wind we had. Now, this was a very southerly direction, which for Grafham can be quite a challenge, especially with C being directly in front of the clubhouse. Means we've got some pretty hefty gusts and some big shifts, and it was all about risk management of trying to basically not do anything too stupid, because as you've seen from earlier videos, these boats are pretty good at falling over, and falling over, not the quickest way of sailing them. So anything you can do to keep the mast up in the air is definitely a good one. We've got a good turnout. We've got myself, Alistair, and his 600 with the white sail, seeing us shortly. We've got a Europe, a D0, and a Hadron on H2. So a pretty interesting mix. Now, the Hadron last time we sailed was struggling to figure out how to do the windy weather sailing, but I think it's safe to say they found the right gear, because they look pretty quick upwind today. Now there's Alistair just to leeward of me. Now I'm very conscious of where he is, and I haven't had a chance to check any line bias or anything, but the key thing I'm really thinking is I'm racing Alistair here. Once I have Alistair behind me, I've got clear air and no one else is a concern, so I'm thinking, can I keep him covered? Can I just sort of manage the risk there? So I can see Alistair's already fairly far down the line, and we've still got a fair amount of time to go, so I'm just thinking I'm gonna head down the line, get some speed going, and then I can roll him and just power off into the distance. So I'm all set up control lines wise, which means I can just focus on getting the boat exactly where I want it, which means directly on top of him. And yeah, I'm giving him a huge amount of dirt now. And looking the other way, which you can't see, Alistair just couldn't quite get going in the groove, whereas as you can see, once I got the kicker on a bit more, I'm able to play that main really nicely and keep the boat really quite flat during those gusts, which only get worse as the race goes on, I should clarify. But as a result of this, I'm actually going really nicely, and by the time I go for the first tack, I've already made a fairly good gain. And as they say, right, the start is the most important part of a race, and being able to, and I mean, it's less so for club racing where we've got, a big line, less boats, I'm the fastest boat. It generally helps making those starts a bit easier compared to at a championship, but there's still the opportunity to mess up the start, and you then still have to deal with the dirt. And this course was very lopsided. It definitely paid. Well, I mean, with the wind, we didn't really want to do more tacks than we needed, but it was definitely paying to go hard left and then tack onto the ley line, especially because you didn't really want to go super close to the shore where the clubhouse and the trees are, and especially because the village on the south side is a little higher, so you get some pretty weird shifts. But yeah, it definitely paid to go this way because you would get a pretty good bearing on the mark. Yeah, you can see the D0 there on the right hand side and the Europe. I'm crossing them very comfortably, which shows that I had a pretty good groove. But you'll see that it is pretty gusty, and I'm having to absolutely work myself to get that boat driving forwards. But yeah, it's not easy. The recent modification I made to my kicker, since fixing it from the Shifty weather one we had the other week, means I can actually get a little bit more on now, I think. I still got a little bit more work to do with the lengths, but it's a huge improvement, and I definitely noticed the Upwind, how easy it was to play the main in these gusts, and especially the shifts. Now, I think I'm looking back to notice that Alistair has gone for his tack, but I think he fell out the boat, which is unfortunate, because I do love a good little duel with Alistair, but we'll wait for race 2 to see if that happens. Just trying to avoid any of the lasers now. There's quite a few of them out, all in radial rigs, so it's just about making sure that I'm not creating too much risk. There's the Hadron. They tacked a little earlier, but again, it looks like biased wise, the left is definitely paid, and you'll see that from the GPS map, how much of the leg you could do on starboard versus port. So you're definitely biased to the starboard side. Now, you can see the clubhouse in the distance. You can sort of see why I'm being conscious of not going right. Yeah, there you go. These are quite happy with the tacks as well, actually, to be honest, because at the time it felt like all my tacks were very sloppy. But to be honest, I crossed the boat very quickly and I stayed out on the rack for most of them, other than like 2. So I would say that's pretty good, and it meant that I didn't have any issues with tacking, despite the amount of kicker I had on. Right, that's the first mark. Now, this reach was difficult. Number one, it's incredibly broad, much broader than you'd want on a 600. It's broad enough that you need to be trapezing, but not tight enough that we're properly trapezing. So I'm kind of sort of waiting for the gusts, and then when they come, I want to get out, but not too much. It's also steering to the gusts as well. Now, I had a bit of an issue with my rudder. It was quite heavy. I'm still trying to get this new rudder blade sorted, as I was having a datchet. I've normally got it right, but typically I put it down, try it a little bit, and then get get it correct. I need to actually put some padding in so that I don't have to think about it. I didn't get it right this day, so you can see like I'm just can't quite get myself comfortable. It's not too bad on this leg, but there was a few other laps where what would happen is I'd get hit by a gust, and then out of the gust I would get dunked myself. So it's really hard to sort of manage the risk here of keeping the boat going and being ready to keep it going when the gust hits, but then not being too underpowered. We're getting pretty close to K now, so this is the jibe mark, and this is a sharp jibe. Obviously, we're going to take the jibe nice and safely, and we're not going to try and go straight out the other side. It's not like I can easily hook myself back on the other side out of the jibe, so we'll just wait for the lasers to get out of the way, because the main thing I'm worried about is I don't want to jibe and capsize onto anyone or get stuck. That's causing more problems, and it's slow. But that's a pretty nice jibe, to be honest. A little bit wobbly, but we make it work. So now I can focus on getting myself out, and at this point I haven't actually worked out where we're going, because I believe it was F, the mark we were going to, was directly behind the committee boat. But when I say directly behind, like, you almost have to go round the start line to get to it because of how weird this course was. And so, yeah, classic 600 thing. You snooze for 2 seconds and then the boat capsizes. So you've got to really keep alert on those reaches. Here's where I accidentally hit the camera, so it does wobble a little bit. Annoyingly, this is where the Hadron, I think the D0, and perhaps maybe Alistair, but he might have still been having his issue, have caught me up now, so less than ideal. But yeah, as I was saying about this leg, I didn't really understand where we were going. I thought it was going to be much broader at first, and then when I saw it was quite tight, well, it was still fairly beam reachy, but yeah, you can see there's the D0 and the Hadron. Hadron's going for the jibe now, which would suggest that the Hadron maybe had an issue that I didn't know about, as the D0 beat them to the mark because they went the right way up the beat. Anyway, we're going now, and as you can see, it's very difficult to sort of, I don't want to be on the rack because that's a little bit too much balance, but you get hit by a couple of these gusts, and you've got to be very nimble on your feet, because one wrong move, or you don't quite bear away quick enough for the gust, then as you saw, you go swimming, and there's not much you can do about it. So now, after that experience, I'm very much mindful of what just happened, and I'm very aware of how we can stop it happening again. But as you can see, we're absolutely going for it, and so because of how close we are to the shore, the water's so flat, which makes it really nice too. I finally figured out where we're going because of where all the lasers were going. It didn't help that I overshot the jibe Mark II, waiting for a good opportunity and gap in the gusts to do my jibe. There's the other end of the start line, so you can see what I mean by it's sort of kind of hidden a little bit, but we figured it out in the end. Now, this mark was really difficult because every time I came into it, I always got hit by a big gust, and the last thing I wanted to do was head up. So it was sort of... This one wasn't too bad. I was able to take a nice rounding. Or there was other boats in the way, so I was trying to go nice and wide around them so that, one, I could go quicker, but two, just in case anything went wrong, I didn't crash into any of them. But yeah, some of these tacks were definitely not my finest moves in the world, but it's a good opportunity to analyse them, especially coming out of these tacks. So yeah, we're going... So like, that's lap 1. That took not even 10 minutes. Yeah, now I've got to deal with the rest of the laser fleet, especially here where I'm trying to just make sure that I can go ahead of them a little bit. Maybe I've got a little bit too much board up. Maybe I'm drifting a little bit too sideways. I'm trying to figure out how much board up I should have on days like today where, you know, I don't need as much board as I have, but yeah, maybe I need to try a little bit more. But yeah, you can see that I've got a good lane here. I'm pointing not at the mark, but I've got a pretty good bearing on it. So it's now just a case of managing those gusts. And as you can see, I'm struggling as it is already to get the boat driving. Nowhere near as easily as I had on that first lap. But I am actually driving it quite a lot nicer, quicker than the lasers, which is key. I'm going really nicely here upwind. I think maybe I'm trapezing probably as high as I was in the last lap, but the gusts are definitely a lot more noticeable. You can see I'm definitely getting knocked sideways by them a little bit more, and I'm having to play that rudder a little harder for the shifts. Now, I've been recently reading Nick Craig's new Helm to Win book that got released at the Dinghy Show. I thought it was an interesting read, so I thought I'd pick it up. And it's got some insightful stuff about gust management and shifts and things that I never really appreciated. I feel like most sailors just... You can see the gust on the water. There's a dark patches coming towards you, and they don't really necessarily know what you should do about them other than, you know, downwind. Sometimes it's good to go into them, but what you can do looking at gusts going downwind, looking at gusts upwind specifically, is depending on where you get hit by the gust will depend on if it's going to be a lift or if it's going to be a shift, and as a result you can then help you, well, one, prepare for that, because I always found it difficult to understand if a shift was going to hit me unless I saw a boat ahead of me get shifted. I've always been wondering, how can I understand those things without having other boats ahead of me sort of tell me if I'm the one who's gone that way up the beat, or if, you know, at the starts of a race where everyone's fairly equal and there isn't really much separation yet, or if you are in the lead, how do you make sure that you can maintain that lead? All things I'm starting to think about as I'm trying to improve my own sailing and generally become a better racer. As growing up, I'd like to think I was quite a competitive racer, but sailing on a little puddle where the shifts are very dramatic and the wind bends are very obvious, how do you sort of manage that on a bigger bit of water like Grafham, where there are shifts and there are land bits that cause the shifts, but they become a lot harder to spot the further away from the land you get. Same for when you're sailing at the sea. How do you know, figure that out? And so I'm still going through the book. It's a good read. I would recommend it. I've also picked up one on wind strategy, so hopefully that will give me some insight. Maybe it's a load of rubbish, but you know, I thought I'd give it a go, a bit of bedtime reading. It's quite hard reading, to be honest. Gets you thinking a lot, but hopefully that will help me try a couple new things for this season, especially as we're going into the first Open of the year at Bow Beach on the 8th and 9th of March. So that should be quite good to race against the local fleet, especially because Grafham has a decent local fleet, but not necessarily a weekly local fleet. We get maybe 4 out at best, 5 out at absolute push. Regularly, normally me every week, and then normally Alistair or Brian come out too, which is normally good to just get to race out a few other boats. And I mean, that's the case with a lot of clubs at the moment, and a lot of classes, that it's just sailing struggling a lot. There is a lot of people who are struggling for numbers, especially open meetings, and it's difficult because to run an open meeting you need numbers, and clubs don't want to run your open meetings if you don't get the numbers, but people don't want to turn up if the weather's bad or if there's too much going on. So it's a difficult challenge because, you know, sailing isn't the only thing in people's lives, even if I make it look like it is the only thing in my life, because it is a big part of it. But yeah, open meetings are getting harder and harder, so yeah, it's a difficult one to sort of help with the numbers. But yeah, I'm curious what other classes are doing to help with numbers. Let me know if you've got any thoughts. To kind of go back towards the footage, like this reach is very this reach is big, and as you can see, I'm getting hit by a big gust. But actually, in race 2, which we'll have a separate video on soon, I'm leading around the first mark, and there's a reason for that. May have been slightly over the line, quite a lot over the line, but we'll address that in a separate video. I end up getting towards the jibe mark, and I just come to a complete stop. Like, the wind just shuts down, and it's so weird considering how big the gusts have been. And it was so windy that only one person wanted to do race 3. Everyone else was absolutely obliterated. You know, so many people retired because it was really, really windy. But yeah, somehow the wind just shut down. I was thinking, I should take some kicker off, you know, power the boat up. But also, I know in like 3 seconds' time, I'm going to regret that decision and, you know, need everything depowered. I'm going really nicely here. The jibe was a lot better. I mean, it was easier not having all those lasers on the inside. You never quite know when they're going to jibe. And also, I'm jibing when there's a good opportunity rather than when I want to in this sort of conditions. Like I said, keeping the mast upright, definitely quicker. Now, here's where I start running into some issues on where I catch up to some of the lasers. Specifically, it's always at the mark roundings. It's always at the blimmin' mark roundings where I've got to go, right, let's go nice and wide round them. So here, I was going really nicely, and then I think here I get hit by a massive gust, and I'm worried that I'm going to capsize the windward into front of them, / also capsize the other way, which is also not great. This one's not too bad, going past number 1 there, but yeah, here, big gust, but then dunked trying to dump the main, and then I'm worried getting hit by it, and I'm like, I would love to head up right now, but as you can see, boat not cooperating, just focusing on keeping the boat going in a straight line. In fact, the easiest way I found to go for the tack was just to slowly scooch in like that. It has actually set me up nicely on the ley line, I guess, but I guess I didn't really head up for it, so gonna go through the committee boat nicely, so there's that. But the key thing is, I didn't capsize, so bear that in mind. I'm probably going to go past... I think I went past the committee boat and made a proper unhappy sounding noise because of how horrible the gusts were getting. I mean, this is a completely different race to what we had at the start of the race. We're on, going on to lap 3, only like 15 minutes in, and it's already turning into something completely different. The boat's just not cooperating. I'm trying my absolute best here to just keep the boat flying, but also I'm trying to pinch for a bit of height so that I don't go smacking into the side of this laser, who I do need to keep clear of as windward boat. But now I'm past them, I can nudge off a little bit, but also with the gusts, I'm sort of playing it sensibly by heading a little bit into the gust and letting the boat sort of depower a little bit, you could say. You know, sort of stuffing it into wind, letting the sail lose power, sort of pinching a bit of height too. It's not my finest work, I'll be honest, but it's definitely a strategy for dealing with the gusts while maintaining height. If I was feeling fitter, and stronger, then I guess the technique would be to bear away for the gust, sheet off a bit, take the power, basically just sail a little freer. But that requires a lot of upper body strength, which I clearly ran out of on the first beat when I was doing it really nicely. The key thing is I'm still driving very fast, nice and forward. So as you can see, this laser here, I've still got a good amount of speed on them. I'm not losing it, despite the fact that I am running with a little bit of heel, which isn't great for the foils, to be honest. Again, something in Nick Craig's book is about how flat your boat should be. I mean, everyone knows your boat should be flat, but it's really emphasized there with a lot of extra detail. It's good to sort of be reminded of the basics. You know, you get distracted by, oh, what mast rate shall I run, or how much kicker shall I put on? But actually, some things like, is your boat flat? It's a pretty good starting point. Yeah, some of these, that's the other thing. My trapeze lines keep getting dropped for these humongous reaches, and then they're not ready for the upwind. But as you can see, we've had some pretty big shifts here, because I feel like on the especially the first lap, I was able to point at that mark almost directly, but the closer I get to the shore, the more it shifts. And so actually I end up just sailing further and further away, but also I could be tacking earlier. We'll have to review the Strava footage to understand, was I actually going tacking earlier, or was I just getting shit, being headed big time? I think the other thing I'm noticing is I'm trying to run with the main sheet a lot more block to block than I was on the first lap, but I actually think I was probably having a better upwind on the first lap than I was now. But then again, the boat is getting hit by gusts a lot more than I did on the first lap. It is definitely windier, and you can tell that already from the footage. I'm trying to figure out where the mark is. As you can see, I'm nowhere near it. You can see it to the left of me, that yellow thing. I keep looking over my shoulder thinking I must be on the ley line because of the angle I'm sailing. But the thing is, because I've been headed, I've actually still got a fair bit to go. It's sort of messing with me because the bearing from the first lap to the now is completely different. And on the first lap, it was basically parallel to the shore, whereas now I am definitely be pointing a bit more of an angle to get across the around the mark, whereas I keep thinking I need to be going round, but it does actually help me to go a little bit further because I can get myself set up nicely for the reach, almost come in with the power and slowly bear away, which is quite helpful. Again, it's all about that risk management, which is always useful. Yeah, nicely done. So we're back for another one of these honking reaches. I mean, they were pretty fun, but not quite, a little bit too broad to get out on the rack fully, to be honest. Maybe I just need to have a bit more confidence in myself and be more prepared to move my feet, but I felt more comfortable just sitting on the gunnel, to be honest, and bearing away a little bit. Like they say, the quickest way to go on a reach is not in a straight line, you know. Bear away in those gusts and then head up for a little bit of pressure to keep the speed constant. So you might be wiggling all over the place and sailing a slightly longer distance, but the reality is you're actually going a quicker, so it's worth the slightly extra distance of wiggling all over the place. Now I'm catching some of the flying 15s. It's interesting because I actually go past a flying 15 on the reach, and I mean, everyone knows that a flying 15 has a lot of sail area and a lot of dirty air that comes off them. But even on a day like today, where it's absolutely honking and I was flying as I came past them, it was like I hit like a wall or like a complete hole as I went below them to go past them. Like, it was crazy how all of a sudden I just lost everything I had and the boat just came to a stop. And I mean, I had enough momentum to get me through the other side of them, but it was just, I just didn't quite expect their wind shadow to be quite as impactful even on a day like today. Like, I know it can be impactful when I'm sailing the RS600 and I'm trying to get below them underneath, but the 400 doesn't quite go as quickly and it's quite heavy, but the 600 can normally get underneath them like I did on the Shifty Weatherwind. Again, my jibes have been pretty good. I mean, as it gets windier in race 2, I seem to forget how to jibe, which is, you know, not great. But, yeah, I just couldn't get past them. I have no idea why. I guess that might be happening later on this reach, potentially, or the next lap. We've only got, this will be this lap, and then the next one's the last one. It was the last lap, actually, yeah. But yeah, as you can see, I'm absolutely flying. But it's kind of up and down, as you can see, like, a few times I'm really having to bear off and dump the main, but a few other times I'm sort of like begging for a bit more power, and if I was feeling a little fitter and maybe a little bit more willing to take a risk, I would hop up on the rack, point up a little bit, get the boat going, and then bear off again. But the issue is, and again, this is something I need to work on, is I actually did this in race 2, sorry. I looked behind me and I nearly threw myself in the water because the boat just started doing horrible things as soon as I turned my head. And I want to work on that so that on this sort of reach, I can look to the left, see if there's any gusts potentially going to hit me, so I can head up for them, get hit by them, and then bear off and take the gust with me. But I find that when it's on these really sketchy, wobbly reaches, every time I sort of, turn my head a little bit, the boat loses all of its stability and it looks like it's all about to throw me in. And at the end of the day, keeping the boat going in a nice straight line is quicker than throwing it in the water, despite looking for a good shift or a good gust. Now, that was a much better rounding than the last lap, and a pretty good tack too, to be honest. Again, I found a good opportunity to go, so I took it. Okay, a little bit tangled on the main sheet there, but that's fine. But yeah, as you can see, I'm just getting absolutely battered by the wind now. I guess it's hard to tell as well. We've obviously got a slightly different camera angle where my carven stick on a clamp to my tiller has rotated slightly. So, I mean, you still get a pretty cool angle, but it is different. Okay, so I think now, as we're going to lap 3, I've got past most of the lasers, perhaps maybe not all of them. My little swim in lap 1 probably didn't help me. I haven't really got any idea where the Hadron or the D0 are. I can see the Europe ahead of me, and I know that I'm catching them. I'm coming round to lap them, which is probably a good thing for handicap. But at this point, I'm just really struggling with the Gusts. I can see them coming. I'm starting to predict what they're going to do based on what I read in Nick Craig's book. But it's really hard to implement that while I'm just trying to like hang on for survival here, to be honest, because I clearly didn't put enough rig tension on. I thought I did, but as you can see, I raked my rig and then my markings were a slightly wrong place. And I thought I put enough rig on, but my windward shroud is flopping all over the place. Once I put enough kicker on, not great. So that's not helping me. It's distracting my focus a little bit. I'm sheeting in way too much. Now, actually, here's the thing. So the week before was the Oxford Blue, and I thought I was over sheeting. And so what I did was between race 2 and 3 was I loosened my strops for the first time since I built the boat. I think I set my strop length and then I left it, and I've never touched it since because I've really liked it. And even on the light wind days, I tend to just like nudge off a little bit, but I was getting really frustrated at Oxford. So I decided the best thing I'm going to do is loosen my strops a bit and see if that helps me upwind, because I was really struggling to race against the guys who are like 15, 20 kilos lighter than me. I think the reality is that the weight difference was probably why they were a little bit quicker upwind than me, but downwind was more about just I went for the gusts, and I think I was able to get some good pressure to get me catching them up. But yeah, I forgot to tighten my strops again, so I'm sailing with effectively light weather strops on a windy day. Now, I mean, it's actually fine, because at the end of the day, I don't really want to be block to block, but there was definitely a few times where I wanted to basically have a little bit more oomph, and I couldn't have it. And I tried to tighten them in between races, and I thought, what am I trying to do? I'm going to literally get thrown in the water trying to do this. So I'm glad I ditched that plan. But yeah, it definitely got me thinking about the strops of, well, you know, maybe that's causing me problems as well on a day like today. Maybe I had them too tight in the first place. I felt like I was going quite well, and at the end of the day I did win this race, which was quite nice, despite my little swim. Clearly the speed I had was good, and my tacks, none of the tacks went wrong, and that's where you can lose a hell of a lot of time. I'd love to understand what the sort of like distance lost from my tacks is, especially when I do things like drop the main sheet there. I mean, I took this reach very carefully, this top ley line very carefully, because of how close we are to the shore. It's getting properly twitchy. As you can see, I'm already getting the boat set up and ready to go, and it's already going, but it's, you can tell it like wants to go more. Oh, there we go. It's going really nicely now, but it's so twitchy because the gusts are, you know, going really nicely. Like this is going really nice. I think even my forestay's flopping from how windy it is. I'm sort of acting as a backstay, you could say. But yeah, the boat's going really nicely. But I'm pretty certain the gust ends and I just get left in a hole and I have to be really quick on my feet to not get splat. Yeah, this is pretty nice. At the time, it didn't really feel pretty nice because I felt like it was too broad to be fun. And heading up was sort of difficult with my heavy rudder. Maybe it was less the rudder blade and more that the elastic was a bit stretched. Looking at it, you can see the elastic's actually not... It's more stretched than it should be. Maybe that was why it was so difficult. Yeah, I had a few people leave comments about my elastic in the last video about how it might have made capsizing a bit harder. Maybe I'll have to try taking it off and see what it's like. I find it's really helpful upwind to stop me from overcorrecting. Oh, again, another solid jibe. Can't say that for the last race. But yeah, there we go. Now, here I'm going to catch up with the Flying 15 and the Europe. This is where I feel that massive wall of dirt. Yeah, there we go. So for context, the camera finishes recording and restarts at 29 minutes, which is why we lose a little bit of footage there. So we're catching up to the Flying 15 and the Europe and a bunch of lasers, but I think they luckily crossed the line too. I think we can also see maybe a D02, but I might be lying. I doubt it. The D0s are probably quite comfortably ahead. They're probably, rounding the windward mark now, sort of thing. But you can see I just come to a complete stop trying to go past the Flying 15. Like, the boat just doesn't want to go. It was really weird. I mean, obviously the gusts might have ended too, and then as soon as I got a little bit further ahead, I was able to, you know, the boat started to go again, and I was able to like actually accelerate away. Europe wasn't too much of a problem. So, yeah, I'm trying to think, how am I going to go around this mark? I've got a Europe on the inside, a flying 15 right up my backside. Luckily, I go nice and wide, give the Europe plenty of space. But the thing I'm thinking of, can I tack and get going before those others come? Now, obviously, I'll be on starboard, and they'll probably have plenty of time to respond to the fact that I'm on starboard, but I don't want to just throw a tack in front of them. I also don't want to capsize in front of them, as, yeah, again, not great. But great tack, I would say. You can just see the Europe does a tack too, and I'm able to just go straight through the line. I'm not really focusing on getting my weight forwards. I'm just focusing on keeping the boat going nicely. Perhaps I should have dropped myself a little lower on the trapeze upwind. I'd love to know what your thoughts are, but yeah, there's our race win, sorted. Yeah, it was a good race in the end, but absolute tough work. I definitely need to work on playing that main, because what I did in that first lap I thought was very good, but I didn't reproduce it in the second, third or fourth, but I guess that comes down to fitness. And they say sailing in the light winds is more about tactics and strategy. In the heavy winds, it's more about who's fitter. I mean, strategy is obviously still essential, but if you're fitter, you can get the boat going quicker than other people.